Thank you, everyone, for sitting here with us. I'm just going to dive right into the questions. Scott, I'm aiming at you first. You, Scott, have been in this space for longer than I've been on this planet. In that time, how has risk management in DLT evolved, and what are the lessons that still apply for us today?
Well, it's a great question for me because, of course, Dr. Haber and I were, when we did the original blockchain foundation work, it wasn't about making a lot of money, it was making the record secure. And I'm happy to say that it's held up pretty well. There are really less to worry about when it comes to the blockchain fundamentals, and more to worry about when you put people in the mix. That's always the weak link when it comes to enhancing the integrity of something. You know, blockchain was designed in such a way that there were no insiders, meaning that the entities that were processing it could not control in an insider sort of way manipulation. But as soon as people have to connect the blockchain back to real people, that's where the risk is always going to manifest itself.
All right, Chris, let's bring it back to the present day. How do you see AI-driven solutions improving DLT security, especially in your case as it pertains to compliance and fraud detection?
Sure, I think as we've all seen, AI solutions are proliferating quite rapidly, and they're touching all aspects of everything all of us do as business. I think in the area of risk and compliance and DLT security, there's some particular applications that are starting to go from ideas on paper to actual production systems that people are using. People are starting to use AI for code reviews. People are starting to use AI for threat detection, threat prioritization, alert prioritization. And in one of my favorite uses of AI, which I'll call SAR GPT, people are using AI so you don't have to write the entire narrative about what's going on the blockchain. You can have an assistant better than Microsoft's paperclip, an AI assistant that helps you, draft what you have to file with the regulators. So a lot of us in compliance are excited about not having to write that out every single time. There's some risk though, and I think the biggest risk in the use of AI is that the humans will get lazy, and the humans will go, oh, the AI says that, and just kind of click approve and send things through without really reviewing what the AIs are producing for hallucinations or other errors. And I think a lot of us who are trying to figure out whether we can use AI in our organizations are really concerned about the human aspect of it and making sure that, particularly when we're using AI systems in a human-in-the-loop model, that the humans that are in the loop are actually being in the loop, that they're actually doing what they're supposed to do to respond to what the AI is prompting them.
Scott, Sagun, yeah.
Just a thought there. Now, first of all, I need to break the plane with the audience and confess that just a couple of minutes ago when we were all in the green room, they said, gee, could you get into any kind of a controversial argument? And I thought, a controversial argument about DLT and compliance, that's like having a fashion show at an actuarial conference. But one thing I would point out, I'm a big AI fan, but for all of the good that it does, there's also, you talk about human in the loop, there's also making sure it really is a human that's in the loop. And the whole concerns about deepfakes and impersonation still become an issue even with DLT.
Yeah, I mean, I circulated a deepfake example.
Chris,
I'm not supposed to fight. We're not supposed to fight.
You're supposed to say, I'm deeply offended.
I'm deeply offended that you would consider that risk, that I hadn't raised that risk. I circulated a deepfake that many of you may have seen on LinkedIn the other day of Nicole Kidman's Estonian passport. And I don't know if any of you have seen this deepfake, but it looks like a picture of a photograph that's been taken of Nicole Kidman's Estonian passport in front of some objects that were required by the compliance officer to be behind the passport, with a shadow of the phone being held by a hand taking the picture. And all of that is AI generated, from the passport itself to the shadow to the articles behind it. And I think those of us in compliance who are used to trusting our eyes, when we see something like that, are going to have to trust our eyes a little less. And there's another AI tool that people are developing, is the tool to detect the deepfakes that have been created by AI. And I think the problem there is that the deepfakes are getting better, and maybe the compliance technology isn't keeping up. So I would encourage anyone who's in the development in that area to run faster, because we have to keep ahead of what the AIs can do to convince us humans to do what we wouldn't normally do without evidence, especially when it can produce such convincing evidence.
Working on it.
Okay, good. Well, then if we're picking a fight, I'll pick a fight with you on your statement about the system being designed to prevent manipulation. I think that one of the big problems with all of the markets that are based on DLT is how significantly subject to manipulation they are, especially before they hit scale, because of the consolidation of human ownership of the asset that's moving around on it, and the ability of whales to, who in many cases hold 4 times the circulating supply, to manipulate those markets quite easily and to extract quite a bit of value from the unwitting, rugged participants.
Whoa, not bad. Rather than respond, I think we should move on to Sagun.
Sagun, you want to join this fight?
So, first of all, before I kind of begin, hi everyone, morning. Thank you for joining. It's a fanboy moment as well for me to have to be on a panel with Scott, especially because he's one of the quoted authors for his work in the Satoshi white paper. I'm not sure how many people know this. So it's really a privilege to share stage with him for the kind of work he's done. Thank you so much. If it would have not been for your work, the Satoshi white paper would have not come out, and I really kind of commend. So thank you so much. I would really like to. The reason why I mentioned this as well is because I come from a computer science background, and I have a background of security protocols. And I think one of the biggest lessons that we are taught in the early days of security protocols and system design is there is no security by obscurity. I want you to process this for a minute. There is no security by obscurity, and I think this is one of the foundation principles on which a lot of these blockchains have been architected and built. What essentially it means is that openness as an ethos is very important for decentralization. So the whole code of Bitcoin is available, and also almost all the other blockchains also follow this open source ethos. And this is so critical to kind of, drive, I would say, an audit on some of these chains, because unless they're not open, you can't audit them. Unless you can't audit them, you can't find out that there is manipulation. And that's the foundation layer that I think you were talking about, Scott, which is so critical because, thinking about all the systems that we know today that process financial information or value transfer, as we know, are mostly closed systems. And there you have an opportunity to manipulate or kind of drive it in a direction which is motivated by certain outcomes. So nothing wrong with that. Those systems have served us well. Those institutions have served us well because that's the only way how humanity has known to build a financial infrastructure. So let's not go and kind of blame them that they have not been doing it right. I think it's about the innovation of these blockchains and the power that drives the next phase. And I think this is where everything is really exciting. An open architecture of these blockchains actually drive that trust in the ecosystem of financial transactions. And I think that matters a lot, especially in this summit, which is a security summit you're talking about. If this doesn't get mentioned, I think it's a little difficult to say, where does that trust come from? It comes from that no security by obscurity.
But to manifest the no security without obscurity, you have to bring into light data that's currently not seen. And while much data about transactions ends up on the blockchain, there are a lot of blind spots that we have to data that is inside services or inside exchanges that we can't see, or on side chains. And I think that for those of us who came from CFTC regulatory backgrounds, we spent a lot of time in the swaps world thinking about what it means to bring swaps data and market data into the light. And I think that as the CFTC gets more engaged in the regulation of digital asset markets, I think we're going to probably see more of that, more requirements, market requirements to bring more of this data into the light so that we can, so that it isn't obscured.
I think you're right. I mean, this is where technology like zero knowledge proofs, Starks potentially come into picture, where they basically help you kind of validate some of these side chains, atomic swaps that you talked about, whether batch together to kind of identify and say whether these transactions happened without actually looking into them. So there, maybe the opposite side of that side is privacy as well. I mean, you would want to also have privacy in the world of financial services, and that could also be a very important feature for a lot of people. So when I said security by no obscurity, I meant more from architecting a system, but at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that all the transactions and personal transactions of people have to be exposed to be auditable. So there's a nuance there from
There is, and it's a really nice feature of having a security architecture that has ZK technology, that you can create transparency, that privacy and transparency aren't always at odds with each other, and that there's some technology that you can apply to maintain both principles at the same time.
Great.
Moving on from the security point just for a moment, Sagun, I've got another one for you. I think Chris will have some ideas about it afterwards. How can you balance decentralization principles on one hand with the need for banks to focus on compliance when it comes to DLT adoption?
So, I mean, decentralization is all about P2P. It's all about openness, open systems. It is about trustlessness. I mean, you don't have to trust an intermediary in between. Allow the system to kind of perform this for you on your behalf as a financial transaction. And I think the right way to balance this for the existing financial infrastructure to kind of step up is to kind of reinvent this from ground up. So natively, every institution out there will have to start seeing this from a DLT first approach. The ability to patch up things to say that I'm ready. I mean, it's been a whiplash of deregulation in the last 4 days. I mean, these 4 days have been like crazy amazing for me to kind of really enjoy. We always say, it takes decades and nothing happens, and then in a few weeks, a decades happen. It's exactly what has happened. In few hours, a decades have happened in terms of regulation. And I think this is where a lot of the existing incumbent financial players would be caught off guard if they have not been preparing for a new world order where this is going to be the financial infrastructure that will drive the new outcomes on financial transactions. And this is where I think they have to look inwards and ask themselves, do we have the right kind of people? Are they natively born in this kind of DLT play? Are they natively skilled in from a DLT play? And that's where the first thing happens is the mindset changes. If you don't have the right people on your team thinking natively about this, they're effectively, because of their lack of knowledge, not being able to understand, would not be able to put the right kind of things in place for you to even start that journey. It's going to be a journey. So it's not like you buy a couple of vendor solutions and you switch on and then, hey, now I am ready to do this. It's about the processes also. At the end of the day, you still run, sample this. As we speak, 12 hours back, there is a crypto heist. It's happened. There's a big exchange called Femex, and it has lost close to around about $37 million of coins. There's a hack, right there. So you're still living in this world where these hacks happen till this date. It's been 16 years for the whole blockchain industry, and these hacks continue to happen because there's a lot of honeypot value to be extracted from these exchanges, hot wallets, and they will continue to happen. So you're talking about building and re-architecting your business natively from ground up so that you can take care of these kind of challenges and hacks. In spite of the best of the efforts, this exchange has got hacked. And Chain Analysis, I think, has a number out there. Last 4 years, $1 billion at least worth of hacks happen every year. So you're talking about a significant number that's only going to proliferate once the adoption of crypto goes much higher. So you're talking about balancing these challenges simultaneously while you adopt the newer technology. You got to have the right people on the team. You got to think natively. You got to think DLT first. And then you also have to apply the regulation, because even if a transaction happens globally from one side of this world, US, which probably is pro-crypto, the capital of crypto, like President Trump said, the other side of the world that is receiving the transaction might have altogether a different kind of regulation. So as a system that is driving these transactions, you still probably will have to figure out challenges of declaring whether this money that has been transferred, this value that has been transferred, is clean or not. Is AML proof or not? Is it been declared and checklisted that this money was not wrong in the first place? So you still would have a lot of regulations to work with. It's not that it's not going to be there, but you'll have to think again from a first mindset. That's very important.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. First of all, I don't want to get buried something Chris said real early on in this, and that is part of the risk that's inherent in the way incentives are structured today is that concentration of asset, concentration of power, concentration of hashing power or staking power. And that's something that needs real long-term thought to work to gradually ameliorate. I also want to come back to Sagun's. So again, we're in violent agreement yet again. To Sagun's point about security by obscurity, it absolutely is true. You need to work in the exact opposite direction. It's not just openness, it's not just transparency, but again, for Stuart and myself, the whole breakthrough idea on the integrity part was you make events as widely witnessed as possible, okay? Essentially, the reason that Bitcoin or other blockchains are secure is that the entire world is witness to what's going on. And so preserving that quality is really essential. I also think it's very interesting, the whole privacy transparency dichotomy. That's something that has energized our thinking for many, many years. And I think for us, a small way forward has to do with being able to disclose on your own terms rather than being coerced into what you have to disclose. Because just to take one example, how many people have bought something on eBay? Okay. Why do you buy, why are you willing to give money to someone who you've never met, who has no brand name, so to speak, never heard of the brand? And the reason is because of the score that they have. Namely, they have a high customer satisfaction rating, but what's important for you as someone that is going to transact with them is knowing that all of their incentives, their economic incentives, are in keeping that rating high. And so this is an example of where the seller absolutely doesn't want to keep their rating private. If they kept their rating private, no one would interact with them. And that's a little bit of a metaphor for this whole privacy issue. So long as we feel that we benefit, that the system is structured in such a way that we benefit by disclosing more, then I don't see privacy as the issue. It's that we want control of what we disclose, and we want to be assured that disclosing it will work to our advantage.
All right, now I can actually disagree with you on something, or there's something for us to argue about. To me, when I hear the root of the question of how things will change in the context of DeFi for compliance and risk management, the thing that jumps out at me are these imposed obligations, right? We decided as a nation, as the way we organize ourselves, that we would impose obligations on financial institutions externally to do specific things, to increase fairness, to level playing fields, to make sure that we protected investors against bad actors. And in DeFi, when someone creates a DeFi tool that does something or has the capacity to do something that we regulate, someone or something needs to have that obligation and have that responsibility, and I don't think they're going to take it up naturally. I think there's too much to be made not having the responsibility and just harvesting the value. And I think that externally imposed, that there will have to eventually be externally imposed obligations. And we've had a preview of that in the IRS's recent decision to include DeFi in the definition of broker for purpose of reporting requirements. They've given DeFi an extra 2 years beyond the rest of the industry to come into compliance, but DeFi is going to have an IRS reporting obligation, and someone's going to have to manifest the responsibility to back that obligation. And DeFi have never offered up as a class. Some DeFi organizers have, but as a class have not offered up someone or something to be regulated to allow the regulators to engage with the person who has that obligation and responsibility to make sure that they're doing it properly. And I don't think they're going to volunteer it. I think it will eventually have to be externally imposed.
Okay, I'm going to do what they never do on talk shows, which is give a knee-jerk reaction.
No one ever does that.
I think you make a good point, but I feel like this would be a profitable conversation off-chain for the two of us, and maybe we can report back to the group, because there's a lot of nuance there.
There's a lot. And it will be very
and
complex,
I'm deeply offended
and it could be
that you
ruinous,
said that.
right? I mean, it is a very important thing to get right. There's a huge balance that I think the regulators are used to looking at some things in balance: investor protection versus market activity and capital formation. And there's these kind of weighty principles on both sides of this issue of regulation of DeFi.
Yeah, and again, I want to be clear. I'm very much in favor of regulation. I just want it to be well-informed regulation. And that sort of goes back to Sagun's point about you have to bring a new mindset when you start looking at DLT. So, for example, a little while back, I spoke to the board of directors of one of the nation's large banks. And these are very intelligent people, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have the mindset quite. And it was crystallized in my mind when the person says, we're talking about the blockchain. And they said, yeah, but how do you back it up? Meaning, how do you make an archival copy? And I said, the blockchain is the backup. And so that's just an example of how, even if you're really bright, and these people were bright, you really have to have the new mindset to understand what's important to insist on in compliance and what, in some sense, is already satisfied just by the way the thing works. So that's why I said nuance. It's a thoughtful discussion to think that through.
a worthy one
Yeah.
over an adult beverage on a Friday afternoon.
And I'm deeply offended by whatever it was that we can find to disagree on.
I'm deeply offended by the fact you're wearing a QR code.
I got another one. So there's this also the question of what firewall are we using on the blockchain? Firewall are we using on the blockchain? So this whole idea of, similarly like backing up a blockchain, the same joke goes for like, so I mean, the old systems are closed systems. They've been architected with a system design of a firewall around the boundary of your system, and you typically architect these systems by saying internet-facing zones and non-internet-facing zones, and you have that old umbilical anchoring in your mind when you're looking at this. So over the last 20, 30 years, leadership has kind of seen these kind of questions come up repetitively in all of these meetings where, people present how we are kind of going to go live on certain systems and architecture. And then they're carrying that kind of mindset, and they end up asking exactly like that question as well, like, hey, do you have a backup? What did you think about the backup? How fast will the backup come up for the blockchain? Well, guess what? It's a wrong construct in your mind, and you're using and applying a wrong construct from the old 30 years of centralized black box systems, and you're trying to put it on this new one. I think that's where the fundamental change has to happen. People who understand this natively have to come forward. You have to give the ship in their hands, the helm, as new captains, and that's how you will be able to upgrade your new products that otherwise there's no other way to reinvent. So Citibank 1970s reinvented and brought the whole business model of Forex that actually saved the banks from a perspective of going down because there was not margin enough in other products. Forex became a money spinner for a lot of these banking industry. It saved the banking industry over a span of last 50 years. Well, here is the opportunity. The internet of value is here, and how will you capture a pie of that will really depend on the mindset of the people you put on your team to allow you to lead into that new opportunity. If not, then yeah, you will be obliterated away. I mean, that's the only way.
I think we need to give Nate the last word because we got 14 seconds.
I was going to say, we have 14 seconds. Thank you all so much for this violent arguing, and thank you all out there for listening.